and 95.3 FM, W237BD Boca Raton, the Health and Wealth Radio Network.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. It's Monday night at 9 p.m. and time for Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Dr. Ricky Siegel is a certified sex therapist, educator, and supervisor, and his brother Larry Siegel is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Siegel Brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
Good evening. Welcome to Sex Talk. I'm Ricky Siegel, certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, certified sexuality educator and clinical sexologist. And welcome.
Thank you for joining us this week.
Glad to see you again, my brother.
Thank you, my brother. Good to see you.
Yeah, same here.
And I don't know how we were so remiss last week. We did the first week of May and forgot to announce that May is National Masturbation Month.
And for May 1st, I believe it was, or no, was it May 6th? Was Sigmund Freud's birthday.
May 6th.
Which is also, I think, a key element in all of this as well.
Good,
so,
good
yes.
things for sex talk topics.
That's right. So, yes, we were remiss, and I think it is important. And let's not waste any more time and wish everybody a happy International Masturbation Month. It's okay if you don't clap. We understand.
They're celebrating.
That's right. That's right. Of all the holidays, I mean, talk about one that we can get behind.
Wow. You know.
I didn't actually mean for that to be punny.
It was very punny. Yes. So, are there events? I'm sure there's events all over the world. We couldn't really pull anything off in here. Like a guest, a live in-studio guest, we'd have to tape up the windows like Howard Stern.
Everybody, for some reason, was busy.
Just keep rolling, right? Give us a call if you're listening. We're on the radio in South Florida on 95.3 FM and 1470 AM. You can call us at 888-565-1470. Or perhaps you're watching live streaming on Facebook. You can shoot us a little email message and send us a question. Join the conversation.
Indeed. And for anybody that might be interested in private consultations and possibly therapy, you can call this young man, Modern Sex Therapy Institutes, at 561-809-1080.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Or shoot an email to ricky@modernsextherapy.com. And as long as we're doing commercial time, I'd like to give a shout out to my brilliant partner, West Palm Beach psychologist Rachel Needle, my partner in Modern Sex Therapy Institutes. We train psychotherapists and medical professionals in sexual counseling and sex therapy, sexuality counseling. Sexual counseling sounds like something inappropriate.
Well, sometimes it is.
Yes. You can check out www.modernsextherapyinstitutes.com to find out about our programs and our new certificate tracks. That's very exciting. We've partnered with Joe Court on training for therapists in LGBTQIA+ informed therapy. Right? I'm sure most therapists would agree that just being gay-friendly doesn't cut it anymore.
Well, and also that you've heard of gay people doesn't mean you're informed about how to work with them.
Right. Yeah, there's a certain competence, but that's a habit people have of advertising as gay-friendly, and think about the message that sends, right?
Yeah, we've talked about that.
As long as therapists are identifying themselves as gay-friendly, then that just perpetuates the idea that there's an awful lot of gay unfriendly therapists. And unfortunately, there are.
Right.
There's a lot of therapists that go, "Oh, what do I do?"
Exactly.
What do you do? What, if a human being comes in your office for psychotherapy? What do you mean, what do you do? Yeah. But I don't know about those people. Another of our certificate tracks is with the brilliant therapist in Manhattan, Michael Aaron. He just had his 3rd annual Alt Sex Conference in a Broadway theater. What a wonderful idea. And
Yeah,
I
nice.
hope we can attend maybe the 4th annual, but they got a good thing going. And he's also put together a panel of leaders in the field on alternative relationships, alt sex, consensual non-monogamy, kink, all that sort of thing. And years ago, if a therapist identified as kink-friendly, that was just like code that they were kinky themselves.
Oh, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Otherwise,
Right.
therapists were like, I don't know about that.
Well, and one thing that's different now, I think, even among a lot of professionals that really wasn't there 20, 30 years ago, was this sort of personal connection to the work that they do. We always used to have to be kind of careful about always keeping a very clear line. No, I do this professionally. No, we can't go there in my personal life. I've known therapists who would have to go out a distance if they wanted to go to a swing club or if they wanted to go to a sex club. They didn't want to go anywhere where they were in their own town, where they might have been known,
Yeah,
where somebody
that's-
might see them.
That's the ethical thing to do. I mean, how different is it for people who work in addiction treatment centers if they are themselves in recovery? They need to travel to go to an AA meeting because they don't need to be sitting in a meeting where their patients are sitting in there and, oh, it's anonymous. No, it isn't.
Right. What's the term we used to use for that? We still use it.
Two hatters.
Two hatters.
Right.
Right.
And yeah, I tell folks around here, if it means driving down to Fort Lauderdale for your own NA meeting or going up to West Palm, you could stay away from Delray. But it's my recovery. No.
Right.
You're never really off the clock, right? That's what this old ethics idea about holding the license.
Right, exactly. And why...
That's 24/7.
Yeah, and why we have this proscription against having a relationship with somebody that you have seen in that professional setting as a therapist, and you're not allowed to date that person forever.
That's still all over the place, from place to place, and it's still crazy. There's still licensing boards that debate, put a time period to it. Well, if the professional relationship has been over for 5 years,
I think medical
then,
boards are more likely to say that. A lot of the mental health boards, it's still in perpetuity.
Not all states.
Well, I'm sure not all states, no.
Yeah.
Because that's one of those, things that are in flux, part of that evolution of how we look at not only sex and sexuality, but how we are seeing the different attitudes evolve of people in the field.
Yeah.
So it's almost, I've heard something almost akin to being labeled elitist to keep that big separation
Between the therapist's own
the
sexual
therapist stuff
selves
and their clients.
Well,
Elitist? Well, yeah.
Like they're not a real person? Or
Exactly, exactly.
They're above having sexual problems? I think it's better than a therapist specializing in their own stuff, right?
Right, countertransference, to use a Freudian term.
Not a treatment modality.
Right. Right. Well, down in Florida, in South Florida here, it's
in plenty of
we
places.
got some
Plenty of
strange
places.
ways of doing business down
We've
here.
been working with therapists all over the country to see that it's not just a Florida thing.
Oh, no. But I think we have our unique issues down here. It's a South Florida thing to brag that you show up. So we have definitely our unique issues.
Yeah.
All right.
So this was a fun article on, was this from Psychology Today? I think so.
Yes. I
7
believe it
things
was.
about sex and love that Sigmund Freud nailed. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that a lot of Freud's writings were, let's politely say, symbolic and out there. And he was rumored to have done 3 or 4 people's worth of cocaine.
Rumored? I think it's beyond rumor.
That might have influenced his writings along the way.
Well, sure, and his manic depression.
A lot of the ideas might have been out there, but he was pretty rock solid in giving us our understanding of sexuality, and he coined the term psychosexual development to stress that they can't be thought of as separate developmental pathways.
Exactly. And I want to stand up a little bit for him. right? Aside from the fact that, if I remember correctly, aren't we somehow related?
I think so.
It's a great cousin on our mother's side.
Not that many generations. But, yeah.
Well, he was just really great.
Quick today.
It's some distant relationship, but I think
happened in Vienna.
Freud, there was a lot that, yes, he put out there that in retrospect, or I should say in more current cultural context, seems way off base. A lot of people really don't like Freud.
It was Victorian era Vienna. Everybody was uptight, and when women were still thought of as getting hysteria.
Well, there were also still property, too. We got to remember that his entire population pool was sexually repressed Victorian women.
Right. But he was one of the first to, rather than trying to induce paroxysm, as we talked about about a month ago, he thought maybe, ask them about their childhood.
Exactly. And I think that's something that we can't give him enough credit for. He really was the first person to
talk therapy,
really, right? Well, not just that, but look at the fact that early childhood experiences have a significant impact on our development and our adult personalities as adults. The relationships. He was one of the first people to talk about the importance of that caregiver relationship with children.
And the emergence of a libido. And people still have a hard time about it because it seems impossible to think of libido unless through an adult lens.
Right.
So people want to look at a 6-week-old child and think of somehow an adult sexual lens.
And I think
as if they can't be libidinous.
Right, exactly. Because I think what we do with the word libido is we mischaracterize it, just like we mischaracterize words like sex. Yeah. So when you talk about libido, and even how many sex therapists and people that are in this field use the term libido as sex drive, as opposed
like
to...
a lustful horniness, right?
Yeah, as opposed to that erotic nature, that erotic drive that we have. So it's no surprise that if we're talking about libido or defining it as sexual desire and sex drive, that people are going to have a hard time when we now apply that to children. Just like how many times over the years, I mean, I've even gotten what are close to death threats because of trainings that you and I do, ironically, at child abuse prevention conferences on children and sexuality, childhood sexual expression. Children are sexual beings. But people have a hard time when you put child and sex in the same sentence.
Right.
But that's what we are.
We're sexual beings.
Yep.
So I wanted another shout out. Some new friends of ours have entered into the learning lab that is child rearing. We want to welcome to the world Kirsten Sagan Keefe and to send all our love and best wishes to Bugsy and Megan.
Bugsy and Megan, congratulations.
Our new parents. So like all new parents, and we don't have to get into too much detail because they're close friends and we don't embarrass them about how that baby Kirsten came into being. And now that she's born, they are sexuality educators and have to raise a sexually healthy child in this world. And fortunately, they've had some good head start with all the stuff they've learned from us over the years.
Yeah, definitely. But that's also a very important point. If you're a parent, like it or not, intending to or not, wanting to or not, you are a sexuality educator. Yeah. And if you do not open your mouth at all, you are still teaching your kids volumes about sex and sexuality.
Absolutely. And silence speaks volumes.
And silence is usually where the negative messages come from.
That's right.
We often speak.
You don't look, you don't touch, you don't got no business down there.
That's right.
Don't touch it, you'll go blind.
Exactly. No child has ever been harmed from information about sex. Kids have been harmed by withholding information about sex. Yeah. That's true, but no kid has ever been harmed. And let's bust another couple of myths on those same things, because some of those have always been driving me crazy.
Okay.
I I cringe when I hear parents or just people in general say things like, I am afraid of giving them too much information.
Oh, yeah. Like
Right?
you can give a 3-year-old too much information.
Any kid.
Right,
There's
like-
no such thing
like
as
they
too
don't
much
have
information.
a built-in way of just glazing over and telling you they're done and walking out of the
They
room.
won't even tell you.
Right.
They could sit there for another hour and they've long since left.
Yeah.
Right? If it doesn't mean anything to them, if they don't understand it, if they don't want to hear it, it doesn't go anywhere. It is impossible to
Too
give
much.
somebody too much information. That's just it's just one of the that's right up there with, oh, I don't want to think so much. You know?
Yeah. Well, you hear
You
that
know,
a lot.
it's impossible. Give your kids the information. Now, I think there's a way of giving maybe inappropriate information. And I'm thinking of that couple that I worked with when I was with Planned Parenthood many years ago.
Sure.
Both parents were physicians. Right? And they were waiting, and actually when I first had contact with them, it was because they knew that their kid was getting to the point where they're going to start asking questions, and they wanted to be prepared. And I talked a lot about them. It was kind of a waste of breath because their 5-year-old, when they finally came in and said, where do babies come from, they were ready. Mom got her old OBGYN texts. Dad got one of his urology texts. They sat this 5-year-old down, said, read this, read that, this chapter, that chapter. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Sure.
And my first response to this couple when they told me that is, whatever the last question your son asked you is the last question your son's
That's
ever
right.
going to ask. Because now asking a question is too much work.
Yeah.
So not giving too much information, but completely inappropriately. Right? So especially in honor of National Masturbation Month, talk to your kids. Don't freak out. Let them be. Exploring their bodies is also an important part of that process.
Don't shame them if you have young kids. Don't make don't make stupid jokes like, "Oh, what are you doing in the bathroom so long?"
Right.
What's with the 45-minute showers? Leave them alone. Give them some
Yes.
dignity and some privacy.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You know, it is perfectly normal. It is perfectly natural. And I will also say that if you do see, you know, any child, again, their hands in their pants, rubbing, sometimes they're under stress, right? When kids are upset and they're stressed out, particularly if there's too much stress, we'll see it almost taking on a compulsive nature.
Right.
But the lesson is never, you catch a kid masturbating, touching themselves genitally, the lesson is never right or wrong. The lesson, if anything really there, is appropriate public or private behavior.
Public
That's
or
what we
private.
want to teach them.
Yeah.
That is not appropriate public, that people do that in private, and then we would hopefully want to give them permission to continue in private. But we don't want to tell them it's wrong. We don't want to shame them, because that goes deep. So what are you looking at there?
Freud believed correctly, long before the rest of society did, that homosexuality is not a mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
There was that famous letter in the very early days of the internet. Someone had scanned a letter he'd written in the 1930s to an American woman who had written to him in Vienna, obviously about her son.
Yeah.
And even back then, you know, the rest of the psychological and psychiatric field didn't declassify homosexuality as a mental illness until the 70s.
Yeah, 73.
Right? DSM-3 in like 1973.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in the 1930s, Freud was talking about that it wasn't a disease, certainly not a crime. No vice, no degradation, cannot be classified as an illness. He talked about babies and skin hunger and erotic, the body being erotic, stuff that certainly stands the test of time.
Yeah, he even advocated for elimination and repeal of laws that criminalized homosexuality. So yeah, Freud was on it when it came to homosexuality.
And you know, most of those early pioneers of sexual study were years ahead of their time. Henry Havelock Ellis was practically run out of town for the things that he wrote about, and now we see them as just perfectly normal, that women masturbate just like men. Say it isn't so.
No,
right?
no, women don't like sex.
He said it 100 years
They're not supposed to be.
before everybody else did. So many sex researchers are vilified, and it comes back to what we always talk about on this show. Sex crazed, sex phobic. People who fear sex and sexuality run around screaming, carrying on when people are curious about it and want to study it and want to explain it for the rest of us.
Because they're spending so much time and energy trying to hide from their own sexuality, from their own impulses, from their own identity, from their own desires and urges that they don't want to deal with. So if somebody else does, it kind of almost makes them think about it. I think in a lot of ways, I'll use sort of as a comparison, why you sometimes have some of the most homophobic people are gay men who are trying to pass and are trying to not be outed. And if they confront let's say a male who is very effeminate, very overt in terms of their own identity, that gay man has the biggest problem with it.
Make the biggest cracks and derogatory terms.
That's right, because the risk is now that spotlight spilling on them. And I think for people that want to talk about and discover and get comfortable with sex and sexuality, that is one of the biggest threats to people who don't.
John says, thanks, my students just dismiss Freud. Yeah, because I think sometimes the truth hits a little too close to home and it makes everybody uncomfortable. Well, thanks for listening, John.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's certainly fatal flaws that Freud had. And I think, again, part of the overgeneralization in people's hatred of Freud. Some of the balls got dropped, so to speak. The whole idea of penis envy is, I think, why so many women don't like him.
Right.
And we can agree that's a ridiculous concept, but in his defense, in context, I don't think he was ever really saying that women want a penis.
No,
women
that was
wanted
about roles.
Privilege that came with having a penis.
Yeah.
Women want some of the status that men had in society.
Yeah.
Right? So
if it was literal like that, no, I think we should make our mark writing a book about clitoris envy.
Sure, I think most men have clitoris envy.
Of course.
First of all, women...
We'd never leave the house.
With what you've got, you can get all the penises you'd ever want. And guys really have this, many guys have this secret fantasy about having a clitoris, thinking about sitting on the train, on the bus, sitting in the middle of their whatever, and being able to kind of stimulate themselves and have and nobody knows. Right? It's kind of hard to be subtle if you're a guy. Right? So there is more. In fact, it's illegal.
Yeah.
But I think there is more validity to clitoris envy for guys than there is penis envy for girls. So, but that was, again, he kind of dropped that ball. But
it was a heavy psychological concept that had little to do with sexuality.
Yeah.
It was more like, if a man was in a position, it was respected and his power was admired. If a woman was in that same position, they go, oh, she's a B word.
Well,
she just
women
wants to have a
couldn't drink.
penis.
They couldn't smoke. Yeah. They had no privilege. They were still legally the property of their husbands. So it was really more, again, I think it was just not phrased very well or put out there very well. The same thing with his latency stage.
Yeah.
Right? Which
it makes sense when you see kids that explosive cognitive development during those years. It makes sense that he might make a mistake in thinking that they have no interest in sexuality.
Well,
because it's
not only that too, but where we see the focus of it and the way I talk about it,
right?
It's socialization.
Sure,
exactly. This is where the focus is out of their body.
Little girls still have cooties at that age.
Well, yeah, but they're also starting. They have cooties, but at the same time, part of having cooties is part of that attraction.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that connects to that other point that Freud made too. That when we talk about, I think he mentioned love relationships, but sexual desire, any erotic urge we have, has got ambivalence attached to it. So when we see that classic, traditional, the little boy running over to the little girl, pulling her pigtail, and then running away, that's his very ambivalent, very awkward way of saying I like you.
And she's supposed to think, oh, great, that's I'm supposed to be happy about that.
Well, then she may show her affection in turn by beating him up.
Yeah.
So we see it in children, and we definitely see it in adult relationships. There's always that ambivalence.
What's this thing you have tomorrow on CBS 12 tomorrow night at 11 o'clock on the late news?
Yes, and for those of you who are in Palm Beach County in particular, I guess there's on Channel 12 CBS at 11 o'clock tomorrow night. They're doing a special investigative report on the shocking fact that senior citizens still enjoy sex.
They need investigative journalists to find that out, do they?
Well, but this has been a couple of months that this one study in particular came out, and it seems to have rocked the world.
Well, now it's made its way to local news, right?
Yes.
So you're going to be on
yes.
CBS
So I will be featured
Palm
in this piece on Channel 12. WP
CBS, right?
Yeah, CBS. I don't know what the local affiliate is. Sorry, local affiliate. But and I think that's another one of those things too. The fact that we're surprised that senior citizens are still sexual, to me, is the foundation of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is. Why are we surprised? So it's one of those things that most people know. We've been doing sex after 60 and sexuality and aging stuff
since before Viagra,
a very long time. And it's kind of funny that whenever we talk about these myths and stereotypes that people have, the old people themselves are the ones that get the biggest kick out of them.
Of course. And I just before we run out of time, let's talk about this next week a little bit. Oh. Next week, our guest will be
Stephanie,
Orange County sex therapist Stephanie Bueller, and we're talking about her new book, Counseling Couples Before, During, and After Pregnancy.
Yeah.
Another favorite subject of ours.
Mm-hmm.
So please tune in next Monday and every Monday at 9 o'clock. I'm Ricky Siegel, my brother Larry Siegel.
Thanks for being with us.
Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
Have a great week and enjoy International Masturbation Month.
Continue celebrating.
Use both hands.
Both hands on the table. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
You've been listening to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or watch live streaming video at AMP2 TV Productions on Facebook, or look for the shows on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next week.